Today we come to the end of the writing journey, specifically to modeling strategies for writing an effective conclusion. Having effectively introduced and concisely and emphatically stated your thesis in your introduction, and then having concretely developed that thesis in your body, how do you effectively bring this paper to an appropriate and climactic ending? This chapter models rhetorical strategies for writing an effective conclusion, for arriving not just as an arguer but as a writer. As always, there are several simple things you can do to achieve this effect. The purpose, and as always, it's helpful to understand what the purpose of a conclusion is. Often we are taught that the purpose of a conclusion is to simply summarize your thesis in subheads. While this is part of it, it is not the primary purpose of a conclusion. The primary function of a conclusion is twofold, is to provide some climactic assessment of the significance of your argument, and number two, to heighten the effect of your writing and your argument on the reader. There are several simple strategies for achieving each of these two goals. First, you can simply begin by restating the central research question that's guided your whole argument. If you use a question as your attention getter, then the conclusion would be a logical place to reintroduce that question. So to begin your conclusion by revisiting that central question of inquiry. Then you can simply follow that with a simple statement of your thesis and a summary of your subheads. Then you want to possibly assess the significance of your thesis by answering the question, so what? Retrospectively evaluate the implications or the importance of what you've argued. You can also heighten the effect on the reader by making a strong personal statement to really step on the pedal of your rhetoric. Another way to heighten the effect on the reader is simply to heighten the diction, to selectively upgrade a few key words. Another way is to heighten the effect on the reader with some color by introducing a metaphor, an alliteration, or these are figurative devices that poets use to heighten the effect of their poetry on the listener. You can also heighten the effect on the reader by heightening the style, by introducing a parallel construction, for example. And you can finally heighten the climactic effect of your writing by having an effective clincher sentence, a final sentence in the form of a quote or a play on the title, or that leaves the reader looking ahead towards tomorrow. So, having wrestled this Frankenstein of logic, quotes, facts, statistics, personal experience, and textual analysis into a satisfying linear and climactic arrangement, you are ready to now proceed to that final moment of persuasion by providing some climactic assessment. Generally speaking, a conclusion that is short and sweet is more desirable than one that is an exercise in reductive redundancy, or that re-argues everything that has already been argued in the body, or one that merely restates your thesis in subheads, and in effect says, that's all, folks. Such a reductive conclusion is also a dysfunctional conclusion, that is not climactic but anticlimactic, assuring that it ends not with a bang but a whimper. If this is the problem, then what might be the solution? Well, a little style will go a long way toward realizing the goal of heightening the effect on your reader. What is required at this moment is a retrospective glance over what has been argued, assessing the worth, the originality, or the implications of the argument, answering the question, so what? In tandem with this retrospective assessment, a few stylistic touches, a figurative device or two, and an apt quote can also enhance the effect on the reader. Let's talk about some of these ways of heightening the effect on the reader, for example, by heightening the diction. Simply highlight a few words of your concluding paragraph. Click on the thesaurus, and a menu will drop down, and simply go shopping and choose a more intelligent sounding multisyllabic word. This can effectively heighten the scholarly tone of your writing, thereby heightening the effect on the reader. So instead of simply writing, say, he likes her, right, he venerates her, he reveres her. This will heighten the scholarly tone, the intelligence of the diction. Caution, don't overdo it. A few key word upgrades will do, make that suffice. You don't want to beat the reader over the head with a Funk and Wagnall's dictionary by sounding pompous or pedantic. So we're talking about a selective upgrade of the diction here to heighten the effect. How do you heighten the effect? By using figurative devices. Well, simply using a metaphor or an alliteration will infuse a little color into your conclusion. In a paper that's been largely consists of facts, quotes, statistics, logic, counter-arguments, if all of a sudden the reader comes upon a little color in the form of a metaphor alliteration, it will heighten the effect on them, so that they realize they're not only the effect in the presence of a good arguer, but an effective writer. That there's not only plenty of substance to this paper, but God forbid, a little style to the writing. Another means of heightening the effect by heightening the style, in addition to heightening the diction and providing a little color in the form of figurative device, is to add a parallel construction or two. A sentence that has a sense of balance to it. Good writing, in a sense, is like good architecture. Good architecture has a sense of symmetry about it, of balance, which provides some aesthetic pleasure to the eye. A well-crafted sentence is like a good piece of architecture that also has a sense of balance or parallelism in its syntax. Finally, think of providing an effective clincher sentence, a final sentence to your conclusion in the form of an apt quote. This will not only provide an emphatic climax to your paper, but will enhance the scholarly tone of it as well. Another way to end your paper or provide a good clincher is to end with a play on the title of your paper. This will subliminally take the reader back to the very first words they saw, your title, and subconsciously make them aware of all the ground that the paper has covered in the interim. It also reinforces the importance of having a good title. And if you do, why not get more bang for your buck by also having those first words of the paper be the last words of the paper. Finally, you can end your conclusion with a look toward the future by leaving the reader thinking about the future. All right. Well, again, I can talk till I'm blue in the face and tell you to have an effective conclusion to your paper that achieves the goals of climactic assessment and heightening the effect. But unless you get some hands-on practice, it's not likely to happen. So first, I'd like you to get a sense of what such an effective, short but sweet conclusion might look like. Here's an example of a student paper that, with some simple revisions, can be turned into an effective conclusion. This paper was typical freshman composition on an experience that shaped your life growing up. In this case, they chose to write about a job. Each year, at each job, I became more outgoing and assertive. I feel these jobs have made me a better person. I was surprised at the results I saw in myself. I still find myself tongue-tied on occasions, but I am making progress every day and feel better about my personality. As you can see, these words just kind of lie on the page. The paper just sort of flatlines at the end. How then can we sort of revise this or rehabilitate this paper to provide some climactic assessment and heightened effect on the reader? There are a few simple revisions that you can make, and here I'm using those made by one of my mentors, Professor John Clark from the University of South Florida. This was Professor Clark's revision to this student paper. At that point, I suddenly discovered that over the past few years I had come a long way. I had escaped the confining closet of myself, but I had also begun, as any useful member of society must, to help others emerge from their solitude, privacy, and insecurity. Emerson's ideal of self-reliance commenced paradoxically to work for me as well. Only when the self could rely upon others was that self strong enough to induce others to rely upon me. You can see that this is still a relatively short paragraph, but it's also short but sweet. In other words, it has several of the virtues of an effective paragraph. It provides color in the form of alliteration and a metaphor. The confining closet of myself is not only metaphorical but alliterative, with the C's repeating. It includes upgraded diction to heighten the scholarly tone, commenced paradoxically. It includes a quote from Emerson on self-reliance, again to heighten the scholarly tone. It heightens the style with a parallel construction. I had escaped, helped others emerge. Finally, it provides some climactic assessment with a retrospective judgment on what has gone before. Over the past few years, I had come a long way. As Professor Clark says, only by continual evaluation, play of mind, and assessment can a writer coerce an essay to build inductively toward a poignant climax. And only at the close can the student truly assess what has gone before. The last stage of the journey is the natural place for peroration, and therefore, at the finality, the student must learn to be more apt as a writer to arrive. All right, so let's see if we can put some of these strategies to practice. In your journal, I'd like you to make an entry in which you combine several of these strategies. Start by restating the central research question related to your term paper. See if you can assess the significance or implications of your argument. Make a strong personal statement developing your opinion. Selectively upgrade a few key words. See if you can add some figurative language in the form of a metaphor or an alliteration. See if you can heighten the style with a parallel construction. And by all means, see if you can devise an effective clicher in the form of a quote, a play on the title, or a look toward tomorrow.